The legislature, so thanks for coming, appreciate it. That's about all I have. Look, here's an update. Session ended last year with inactivity. There was a bill that wasn't brought to the floor, so nevertheless, here we are today, still talking about the same issue that Matt Baumgartner and I about 3 years ago started a social media campaign, and we never thought that we would take it to this level. So just for that is, it's good to be an American businessman. You can really just do some cool stuff just by getting the word out there. New Year's Eve is approaching. Annually, New York State sees 40,000 arrests for DWI. During the course of New Year's holiday crackdown, you'll see 500 arrests for DWI. You will probably see close to 6 deaths, unfortunately, as part of the New Year's Eve festivities. And we feel that ride sharing has to cut down on these numbers. It's obvious. Oh, by the way, great weather for riding a gondola this morning to get over here to Albany City Hall. I was against it at first, but now I'm all for it. So for New Year's Eve, we had this great party on New Year's Eve in Troy, and somebody was asking me, hey, can we get a cab ride home? I said, there's this guy with a rickshaw. It's probably your best option. As far as the cabs go, they may as well take the holiday weekend off because they're completely useless. Cabs generate most of their revenue for medical transport. They're not interested in recreational transportation, as I like to refer to it, along with Assemblymember John McDonald. There's been a lot of talk about special licenses being required. Uber is an app, meaning you drive your own car, which if you have a driver's license, you pretty much know how to do that. I don't see how it's any different if somebody's going to sit in your back seat. It's essentially the same thing as far as I'm concerned. It's just time that we make this thing happen. 47 states, including Kazakhstan, have Uber, so that means that Borat actually has Uber as well. And welcome to Tech Valley, the land of innovation, where we build a $1 billion chip fab plant just to invite people here from all over the world so they can laugh at us for not having Uber and Lyft when they get here. I'd like to turn it over to Assemblymember John McDonald, who has been the biggest advocate of ride sharing, 100% honestly. Thank you.
Thank you, Vic, and it's an honor to be here with, of course, Mayor Sheehan, Sheriff Apple, and my colleague Pat Fay, and many people in the business community and the community at large on what really should be a very simple request. And at the same token, and I know many people, and I'm going to defer to the Sheriff about the DWI, but the reality is this, it's true, New Year's Eve is probably arguably the most symbolic event for going out and having a few drinks and relaxing, but the reality is, sadly, DWIs happen 365 days a year. And we need to have appropriate ride sharing here in New York State, plain and simple. Now, we have 2 strikes against us right now. End of session, the legislature failed to enact legislation. I should restate that. New York State government failed to enact legislation. We almost had a bite at the apple last week. Would have been this week. Unfortunately, and maybe it's a good thing in some circumstances, we're not back in Albany this week because I would have been here to do ride-sharing legislation on its own. Not terribly concerned about the pay raise, not my interest, but ride-sharing legislation. And for this reason, it is the most simplistic economic development opportunity that the state can put into play tomorrow. By far the most simplistic. You know, as many of you know, I'm a business person. My grandfather started a business back in 1931, and he had a very simple process. The customer's always right. Listen to your customer, because if you don't listen to your customer, they're going to leave. And guess what? New York State, our population is decreasing for a variety of different things. But as Vic points out, it is embarrassing that we can't get a simple app approved in New York State. I am very pleased that the governor is excited about ride sharing. I expect, particularly now that we have a change in the State of the State address, where he's going to be going out into various communities throughout the state, that particularly in the upstate communities, this will be his single most important topic that he talks about. And as I share with the speaker and with many people, we start session next Wednesday, January 4th. And I hope that we pass legislation immediately once we're in session, to make sure that New York State is not an embarrassment throughout the rest of this country. Thank you very much.
We'll hold all questions till the end. I would add Assemblymember Pat Fahey as definitely in support of 100%. There are a lot of people in the legislature, they want to act like they support this, and they'll put out fake PR and messaging associated with seeming like they support this thing. Pat Fahey, Assemblymember McDonald, you guys actually support this thing, so I'd like to introduce Pat Fahey right now.
Good morning, and thank you for doing this, and for hosting this, and for your continued advocacy and patience, or maybe not so much patience. This has been a tough bill, and tough bills do require compromise, and there has been a lot of compromises. I too thought last week that we would be singing, I was singing the I'll be home for Christmas instead of the I'll be home for Christmas. I was singing in my head that let's bring this home for Christmas. That did not happen. We still have a couple of days between this bill and the Indigent Legal Services bill. I still have my fingers crossed, but with each day I know it is more remote, and clearly we are at the very, very end of the year. And this was the most of the legislative package. This was critically important. A good compromise was reached by all. I too hope that next week we will come right back, if we don't reconvene this week, and get this done, because it is about safety, as we've heard, and I think we will be less safe on New Year's Eve without this legislation. But it is also economic development, and in the end, New York, as you know, we cared about the passenger, we care about the drivers, and that's what led to what I think is a pretty good compromise. But in the end, the reason I stayed supportive, the reason I was an original co-sponsor, is while I had some concerns, I know Cliff Perez is here, we still haven't worked out all we need to for the disabled, but we're closer. We definitely have a better bill. But in the end, this is about economic development, particularly for small businesses, particularly for our local communities. People want to go out, they want to enjoy an evening out, and act responsibly. And ride sharing allows for individuals, for families and others to act responsibly. So let's still hope for this week. I know that is more and more remote, but certainly we will be at it full speed again next week. And I think it is because in the end, this is good for our local economies, and that's why I do believe we'll get this over the finish line. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. 100,000 people live in the city of Albany. I'm a Troy businessman. I tease the mayor of Albany a little bit, but I am Troy crazy. And we'd love to have your business come to Troy, and I'd like to eat dinner out in Albany more often. The Honorable Kat Machine.
So the wonderful thing about the great city of Albany and the cities of Troy and Schenectady and our surrounding towns is that we are one region. When people come here, they don't see municipal lines. They see exciting places where they want to go and enjoy themselves. And so as a mayor, it is incredibly frustrating that we still stand here today without another tool in the toolbox of transportation in our region. It exists virtually everywhere. So let me tell you, as a mayor that represents thousands and thousands of college students who do not have the ability to use an app that can be used across the country to get home safely, if they're in a situation where they're with a group of people who have had too much to drink, or if they simply want to get back to campus. The buses are an important part of that transportation, and if Carm Brazil were here, he would tell you the same thing. He's the CEO of CDTA. He supports rideshare. Our university presidents support rideshare. Our business owners support rideshare. I talked with senior citizens in our Nork. It's a naturally occurring retirement community out on Whitehall Road. And you know what? They support rideshare. Being able to have an app that they can use to get to the grocery store, to go to visit a grandchild, to not have to worry about transacting in cash, to know that actually a vehicle is going to show up the first time that they press that app, that they're not going to be calling back to a dispatcher 3 times and then being hung up on. Those are the stories that I hear when I'm out and about in our community. This isn't about replacing anything. It's about adding a mode of transportation that is used across the country to spur economic development and to allow for more options in our community. We think about what we are trying to create here in Tech Valley. I spoke with the CEO of GE Power Systems. He said that in their class that they have at GE for their best and brightest students, where they're bringing young people from across the country together in their management training program, and they survey them and ask them, what GE business are you most interested in working in? 80% choose power systems. It is the wave of the future, the technology of the future, and many of those jobs sit right here in Schenectady. So that promising young MBA gets off a plane in Albany and goes out to use their app in order to get out to GE Power Systems, and they can't use it. So this is about all across the spectrum, from people who live here in the city of Albany who simply want to get to ShopRite, to people who are coming here and wanting to invest in businesses and work for businesses here in Tech Valley. We need this tool. And as a mayor, it is incredibly frustrating that we don't have the ability to just do this ourselves. Because I can assure you, I speak with my fellow mayors. I speak with the mayors of Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse. We want this. We need this. We see this as incredibly important to the work that we're doing to try to grow business in our communities. And it is incredibly important to us, to the business leaders in our cities, to the education leaders in our cities, and to the residents of our cities, that this legislation is passed and is passed as soon as possible. I would love for you guys to come back tomorrow and just get this done. I commend Governor Cuomo for his support of it. I commend the head of our Empire State Development, Howard Zemsky, who has indicated that he's supportive of this. We need this. Our state, our residents need this. So please, I ask the legislature, think about the promise of Upstate, the promise of what we have going on here, the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been invested in economic development, and get this simple legislation passed. Thank you.
I can't believe we're still standing here talking about this. We've been talking about this for 3 years, right? And here we are, it's the same conversation, and it's getting very frustrating, but DWI is big business. There's a lot of money associated with getting arrested for driving under the influence. And the New York State trial lawyers are a lobbying firm that is one of the highest powered lobbying firms in the state, and they actively lobby to try to get this thing held up. And I'm pretty sure that's why we're still standing here today, 3 years later. But the guy behind me, Craig Apple, he makes his living off of DWI, but he cares about the people. He does. This is big business. This is a legitimate business. I say that as a businessman looking at you with a straight face right now. DWI is big business. But what I like about Craig Apple is he really does care about the people of Albany, and he doesn't want to see this happen anymore.
I hope I make my living in other ways as well, but you know, the problem with politics is that a lot of people get used as pawns until people obtain their personal agendas and they're fulfilled. And for this to be sitting here 3 years later is a no-brainer for me. I don't understand why, when what I have in front of me, I printed out before I walked up, is a list of 19 fatalities in Albany County, alcohol-related. 19. It's our second highest year in 3. We can do better. We owe our people better. We have to do more to remove the intoxicated drivers from our highways and give all of our residents an opportunity to make that decision to get home safely, rather than have 2 or 3 beers, know they're not going to be able to get a taxi cab, and you know what, I just live down the street, maybe I can sneak home. And that's when the accident happens, because it'll never happen to me, right? Give them the alternative. It's a safe, inexpensive way to get home. I don't understand what the problem is, but the whole name of the game here is to remove the intoxicated drivers from our highways and remove that little bar that right now, if you're sitting out there and you hit the Uber app, it says, sorry, Uber not currently available in your area. So thank you, and have a safe weekend. This is one of our busiest weekends of the year going into it. We do need another safe alternative to get people home safely.
Hey, call me a cab. You're a cab. Deputy Mayor Monica Krajewski, City of Troy. She's doing a fantastic job. Things are great in Troy. You guys should visit if you haven't been there in a while. Deputy Mayor Monica Krajewski.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vic, Matt, and the other coalition of local and business leaders who are with us today. The expansion of quality alternative transportation options like ride sharing in our capital region is imperative for not only the safety of our populations, but also for our future growth. Families, friends, and loved ones are taking to the streets of Troy and other communities across the capital region to share in the joy of this holiday season. The safety of our streets and our community continues to be a priority for the City of Troy. The expansion of ride-sharing services to our communities would connect drivers with riders who need a lift home, assisting our local law enforcement agencies during busy holiday weekends, while enhancing the safety of our streets across the community as a whole. During the last several years, Troy has grown into a destination for many from across the capital region who visit the Collar City to shop, dine, gather, and live. We have residents and visitors who enjoy many of our diverse and vibrant small businesses, our craft breweries, and dine at many of our restaurants. However, at the end of the day, we want them to get home safely. During the last, upstate cities want to attract diverse populations, thriving economies, and revitalization. We are historic legacy cities that are attracting the next century of businesses and residents. In order to provide the quality of life and the amenities that will keep us competitive, we must look to the future. We must embrace what other thriving city centers across the country and even downstate already experience. The City of Troy strongly supports bringing ride-sharing to our region and thanks the advocates and the elected leaders who continue to make this a reality in 2016 or 17. Thank you.
A couple of acknowledgments, three very handsome guys. Matt Baumgartner, Albany restaurant owner right here. Joe Bonilla, who's the president of Relentless Awareness, and Jay Holland from the New York State Restaurant Association. Thank you for your support. And I'd like to invite up the Capital Region Chamber Director of Government Relations, Tom O'Connor.
Good morning. Capital Region Chamber represents over 2,500 businesses in the Capital Region, employing 150,000 employees. Ride sharing is our number one issue. Across the board, whether it's a small business owner or a large corporation, they want the ability to open up an app and get Uber or Lyft. I've heard a lot of words today. No-brainer, embarrassment. And to our membership, that truly sums it up. It's a no-brainer. This is a quick lift. It's very easy to come together as a state government, put a package together that brings Uber and Lyft to New York, to upstate New York. Other states have done it. And it's also an embarrassment. Our members can't understand and say with a straight face, I have a business in Tech Valley, because it's really not true yet. How can we call ourselves Tech Valley with the simplest thing? Opening up an app, getting off at the airport or the train station. So it says something. A lot of times it's your first impression to this area. You get off at other airports or train stations across the country, you take out your phone and Uber or Lyft shows up. You come here and you think Tech Valley, you're gonna have all those conveniences. We don't. So the Chamber's message is simple to our state government. Listen to upstate. Listen to upstate business owners. We want Uber, we want Lyft. You need to act and bring ride sharing now. Because as Vic said, we've had too many of these press conferences. The next press conference we should have is, guess what, New York? We have Uber and Lyft. Thank you.
Two more speakers, and then we'll open it up for questioning the Capital Craft Beverage Trail President, Johnny Kirby.
Thanks, folks. Just very quickly, I think all these fantastic people behind me have covered the main points.
number one, it's about safety, and that's first and foremost. And also economic development. As a small business owner and representing other small businesses, it speaks to credibility. You know, people often ask, you know, why do you start a business in Albany? And there are a number of reasons that I can put forth, but there are also a number of criticisms I get, and Uber is a huge part of why people think that this is not a great place to do business. And it's sad because it's pre-existing infrastructure, right? We already have the roads, we already have the phones, we already have the cars. There's no development involved in making this happen, except that it's being held up by a piece of paper. And frankly, as a business member, as a member of the community at large, I think it's absurd that it's still an issue. And hopefully that's an event we can fix sooner than later. Thank you very much.
I'd like to acknowledge the members of the Log Street Business Improvement District who are in attendance here today, and I would like to also introduce the Executive Director of the Downtown Albany Business Improvement District, Georgette Fenton.
So I will definitely try to keep this brief. For us and for most of the business improvement districts, it's about three things. It's about safety, which you've heard a lot about, but when the buses end at midnight and the bars close at 4, how are we getting our patrons safely home? 2, it is about remaining competitive. When we're trying to attract businesses here, when we're trying to attract young, innovative, creative people to move to the area to work here, I hear from my businesses all the time that their clients come up and they can't get from the train station to downtown Albany. That's a real problem when we're trying to attract top talent and they can't get to where they need to be because we don't have ride sharing. That's a real problem and we're losing our competitive edge. And then the third is, how do we welcome our visitors? We're about to open our convention center at the end of March, projected 80,000 visitors coming to our capital city. And how do we have them move around? How do we get them to experience the history, the incredible food and wine that we have in our region? And it's through ride sharing, and they're absolutely a necessity for our region to continue to grow and attract the best of the best for 2017. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we'd like to open it up for questions. Anyone on the panel? Sir.
You all talked about being embarrassed, and I'm curious as to why you're not embarrassed to be supporting companies that actively discriminate against disabled people.
Companies that actively discriminate against, so we all support companies that actively discriminate against disabled people.
Yes.
Uber's an app. Uber's an app.
Uber connects people to transportation.
I'll turn this over to Pat Fay, who I believe has had the most discussions with John McDonald as well. I mean, one of you two, I know that you've discussed.
I appreciate your comments. This has been a very serious concern of mine from day one. Although as I mentioned, I want to be as open as I can. I am an original co-sponsor of this legislation. It is not a perfect bill. I said that in my comments. But we do know that at least a number of disabled will be better served. And in other communities, as you know, there are disability groups that have supported this because while it doesn't, we still have local control, and we can do more at each of the local levels. In addition, it does create a market for serving the disabled, and then those who are more physically accessible, for instance, those who are visually impaired and cannot get a driver's license, those who have epilepsy and cannot have a driver's license. It does open up a whole range of options, not for all disabled, but for large segments of the disabled. As you know, Uber and Lyft are also actively engaged in supporting driverless vehicles as well, and I understand we're about 5 years away from that, so I think we will see more and more options available in that regard as well over the next few years. So I started my comments by saying this is not a perfect bill, but I do believe it offers up more options for more individuals, including the elderly, as you heard other speakers talk about, than less. But in the end, when I talked about the investments in the local economy, in the end, this does create jobs. There will be a market, there will be subsidies, as you know, because this was one of the issues holding up the bill last year. There are accommodations in there, as well as funding to help subsidize those who need physical access, the physically disabled. So we will see more. Is it perfect, though? I'm not going to tell you it's perfect, but I do think in the end, it opens up significantly more options than had been there in the past.
Thanks. And the other question that I would say is, what is the state of play now? Are we happy with the choices and alternatives that we have today? And I think the answer to that is no. In virtually every municipality that I'm aware of where Uber and Lyft and ride sharing is an option, it has not displaced any other mode of transportation. There's still public transportation, and this allows us to link people to the last mile, and there is still a robust taxis in many, many cities. So, we need to address issues and expand availability. I know that many of the disabled who, as I said, live in the Newark are incredibly frustrated by our current system and would welcome the opportunity to have an additional option. So, the state of play today is not satisfactory and not serving the needs of anybody. And so we need to expand offerings. But let's take questions from the media first.
This question is for Sheriff Apple. Your comments were pretty brief, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about the statistics of drunk drivers on the road on New Year's Eve weekend and how something like ride sharing would take more of those types of people off the road.
Look, we're always looking for other additional alternatives to getting people home safely. A number of years ago, Albany County had to stop our Safe Ride program due to the amount of money that we had to invest in it. And quite honestly, it was a subpar program at best anyway. I mean, we were using buses at that point to pick up large groups of intoxicated people, which nothing good is going to come from at the end of that ride. So we ended up partnering with Martin Harding and Mazzotti, and now they fund it. But still, there's an issue with cabs out there, getting the cabs. We need to have more people out there, more accessibility for intoxicated people to get home safely. We're heading into one of the busiest weeks, one of the busiest weekends, one of the busiest partying weekends. And there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be like, well, you know what, I haven't had a drink since the ball came down at 12 o'clock. I'm okay to get home. When in reality, you know what, if they still feel a little tipsy or buzzed, that's drunk driving. So we need to have other measures out there to get people home safely. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, would you also say it's an issue if people are waiting a little bit too long for a cab, they might give up?
Absolutely.
Cars anyway?
Absolutely. We called last year, and it took 2.5 hours to get a ride to our house to get somebody home. They ended up staying over because they wanted to take that chance. Well, I'm fine. It's been another 2 hours. So, you know what? Fortunately, they made the right decision and they stayed home. Not everyone's going to make that decision, and they're going to roll the dice thinking that, you know what, 2 hours have passed, I haven't had a drink in 2 hours, I'm good to go. Needless to say, they've had 12 2 hours prior, 2 hours prior to that. So, listen, this is a safe alternative. It's an additional tool for law enforcement to make sure that people are getting home and we're removing the intoxicated driver from our highways, and that's really our goal. I know it's maybe not a perfect solution, but you know what? The more tools that are in that toolbox, the better chance we got of saving lives.
A question for the Assemblyman or Assemblywoman: if this is a no-brainer, what's holding this up? Who is holding this up? Who's against this?
It's an interesting dilemma. I don't know if it'll be productive to point fingers on who's holding it up. Was it held up because of insurance thresholds? Absolutely. We totally disagreed with the insurance thresholds that they were trying to establish, because when you look at the Capital Region versus New York City, it's night and day. And the reality is, my approach has been, let's take a wait-and-see approach. Put in greater thresholds which currently exist in the taxi community right now, because quite frankly, if people ever took a look behind and saw the thresholds, they'd never get in a cab again in the Capital Region. But let's improve thresholds to make sure that safety of passengers is protected. In that same token, let's see what the experience is over the next 2 or 3 years. That's very common practice in the insurance industry. So that's really been part of the holdup. I really do think now that the governor is very much more engaged. Howard Zemsky's engaged. I think that we have an opportunity to move this ball forward sooner rather than later.
Anyone else in the media? We'll break out into individual sessions as soon as we're done here with anyone in the audience? Cliff.
Thank you. I'd just like to at least raise this issue that was mentioned about how it's not ruining businesses someplace else. That's untrue. If you look at what's happening in New York City, it is ruining the taxi industry in New York City. Clearly, it is ruining for people with disabilities. As you may or may not know, we've had to fight New York City more than 2 or 3 times in court because they don't want to provide accessibility, just like they don't want to provide accessibility with Uber. And so we had to fight in court, finally won this battle so that by 2020, 50% of their fleet would be wheelchair accessible. Unfortunately, it won't be 50%, or at least it might be 50%, but that percentage will be a lot smaller because Uber and Lyft are eating away at the taxi industry in New York City. We can even ask the people in New York City who drive taxis, and they'll clearly tell you that they are ruining the taxi company. So I don't know whether that's part of the plan because you're unhappy with the taxi industry, so by bringing them in, you'll just destroy the taxi industry and have just rideshare. I don't know. But clearly, we have the ability to address accessibility. It's being done in Philadelphia. All you need to do is look at what's happening there. They have a program where they are leasing vehicles that are wheelchair accessible. We can do that here, but we have to do it through legislation. And I'm just strongly encouraging all of you to not forget about people.
Okay, Cliff, I hear what you're saying. But you know what? They are getting us back because we don't have the service up here. This is the payback. Now, Uber is an app that connects people looking to conduct a simple transaction, like eBay. Uber is not a taxi company. They don't own cars. It's an app. It's technology. We're in Tech Valley. We want access to technology available all over the world, easily, globally, every day. And we are stuck.
Accessible technology. This is not accessible for us. What happens in New York City is you contact Uber, they charge you $2 to contact a taxi, and they're not.
You know what? I hope Uber goes out of business. I hope Uber goes out of business. I hope Lyft goes out of business. I don't care about these companies.
We're not against ride sharing. We are
Neither.
against discriminating.
We'll figure it out. But as far as these two companies go, there's no guarantee that they're going to be controlling ride sharing moving forward. They happen to be doing it right now. If they're not satisfying the clientele, they'll go out of business because that's what capitalism is all about. So I hope they do go out of business. I hope they're improved with somebody even better. But allow the technology and allow us to perfect it. Anybody else?
Yeah, and I just want to stress, there's not a single person standing here who doesn't believe strongly that we need to have accessible transportation for everybody. That is not what is at issue here. We are fighting in order to be able to get our state legislature to permit ride sharing in upstate. Give the mayors, give the municipalities up here the ability to be able to provide this mode of transportation. And we will work with advocates across our community, as we always have, at the local level, because we know more than anybody else what the challenges are in our particular municipalities. And we will fight to make this work. But it's really important that we have the ability to add a tool to the toolbox, to be able to move forward with ride sharing, and to be able to address the very issues that you're talking about. Because I certainly know that our taxi system here isn't working for people with disabilities either. So we need more tools in the toolbox and advocacy from people like you in order to be able to get it to the level that we expect for the residents, for the citizens of upstate. It's not preventing anything from happening and waiting for the perfect. Let's work on the perfect while we're moving forward and providing this really important asset to our community. I know parents of college students who won't send their child to school without an app because they want to know that their kid can get home safely. I know of seniors who are basically shut in the wintertime because they don't want to navigate the outdoors. They don't want to navigate getting to that bus stop. They want to be able to access ride sharing. So there are advocates out there, there are people out there with needs, and let's work together in order to address the issues that you're talking about. But it starts with us getting the legislature to tell upstate that we can come out of the dark ages and join the rest of the country and have ride sharing in upstate New York. That's what we need at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.